Welcome to the Codcast. I'm Bruce Moll from CommonWealth Magazine, and I'm joined today by three women from Somerset, Massachusetts, who took on a big corporate neighbor and won a major court victory last week. Nicole McDonald, Kathy Souza, and Nancy Thomas all live near Brayton Point, a large piece of property that used to be home to one of the largest coal-fired power plants in New England. In 2018, a company from St. Louis bought the property, tore down the massive plant and its two cooling towers, and positioned the property for offshore wind development. When offshore wind was slow to take off, the company moved to a plan B, renting space to a company that would acquire scrap metal locally and then export it via ship to Turkey and other locations. That meant trucks full of scrap metal rumbling down the narrow street to Brayton Point. The trucks would unload their cargo, the scrap metal would be moved into a large mound, and then the metal would be loaded onto a ship. Nicole, let's start with you. How did this scrap metal operation affect you?
First of all, thank you, Bruce, for all your coverage that you've done. This has been a long process for the residents of Somerset. It's been an experience where we've been suffering from dust from the scrap metal operation since the operation started back in the summer of 2019. It covers our homes, it covers our windows. You can taste it when you walk, depending on which way the wind is blowing. It irritates your eyes, the back of your throat, and we know that it's metal dust. It's hazardous, caustic metal dust. So it has been a very long 2.5 years, and originally the ships were loading 24 hours a day. There's upwards of 50 scrap metal trucks dumping tractor trailer loads full of dry, dusty scrap metal every day, all day. It has really been a nightmare experience for the residents.
Kathy, how about you? How has it affected your life?
Again, as Nicole said, they were loading 24/7. The operation was 24/7. No measurable amount of trucks. There wasn't any limit on the trucks, so the trucks were coming day in and day out, and the loading of the ships were 24 hours. And then as it progressed a little, it was just, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, living next to a scrap metal operation with a ship loading a little more than 1,000 feet away from your home, that's all day and night. It's maddening. I mean, it's enough to drive everybody in the neighborhood mad. And then just the fight has been 2.5 years nonstop. So, I mean, it's affected, of course, it affects your family life. It affects everything you do because you're really trying very hard to show everybody what's obvious to us because we're right in front of it. And it's not obvious to anybody who can't see it or hear it daily. It started off as, well, they're just complaining. Then it progressed to, wait a minute, there really might be some environmental concerns here, to this is really affecting everybody's health and well-being.
Nancy, what about you? What was your story?
So I live a few hundred yards across from the dock. So unfortunately, I'm on the front line here. And as my co-defendants have stated, it's been a nightmare, but I also want to mention that there has been some positive that's come out of this situation, and that is the mobilization of this small residential neighborhood to fight big business, to do what's right. I'm so proud of my neighbors. We have come together. It's always been a close-knit community. It's even closer now, and we consider each other family at this point. For someone who's lived in this neighborhood over 50 years, I couldn't be more proud of what we've accomplished, not just Nicole, Kathy, and I, but all of the residents in Brayton Point, in Lees River, Swansea, on the Fall River waterfront. It's been just inspiring to see the support that we've gotten from the other residents. And moving forward, I believe we'll all be still in this together.
So Nancy, tell me a little bit about the three of you, though. Did you guys know each other well before the trucks began rolling, or how did you three come together on this?
So it was a neighbor who approached me and said, hey, a bunch of us are getting together to kind of address this scrap metal situation. Do you want to come down? They were meeting down at the end of the street at the beach. And I'm like, sure, I'm definitely interested because this is, crazy. And I went down for a walk to the end of the beach, and there were about 30 people down there, some who I knew, some who I didn't, but all had one thing in common. They all lived in this neighborhood or in a surrounding area and wanted to do something about what was happening. And I knew Nicole before. I did not know Kathy. Now I consider her like a sister. And it's been a wonderful experience as well as a horrible experience. But we all know each other now, and we all stand together.
Kathy, there's been a building on what Nancy was talking about, there's been a decided political aspect to this, because what was interesting was not that the neighborhood mobilized, but the neighborhood's mobilization led the town to sort of get more and more involved. And you ended up on the select board. So, and the select board sort of transformed. Talk a little bit about that transformation in the community, because I know it wasn't without some detractors opposed to what you were doing.
And that is exactly what happened. I mean, we showed up at meetings. So I always had attended meetings prior to this, more for, items of interest. But we all decided, at that meeting that Nancy talked about, we're going to start going to the meetings because we needed to hear what was going on. We needed to bring our concerns forward. And when we did that, we started seeing, we had meetings where we would have a select person who would tell us that there would be no public input. And then when it turned to COVID and it was Zoom meetings, it was became a joke to just hit mute on a resident so that they couldn't speak. So we really started looking at how the town was operating on all fronts. I mean, we were extremely fortunate to have a zoning board that was strong and understood the concerns and understood the process of big business. But yeah, that's what we started saying. We have to, one by one, get into town government. And I'm thrilled that I'm a selectman. I actually enjoy it. Something before this started, I never saw myself doing in a million years. I actually enjoy it. I enjoy meeting with the residents. Nancy's part of 2 boards, I believe. She's on the Historical Society and Cultural Council. And Nicole is a planning board member.
So in a sense, this whole issue has mobilized you, the 3 of you, to sounds like to get into town government and sort of make sure it's doing what you want it to do. Is that fair to say?
It's not what, and I understand what you're saying, what we want it to do. It's what the right thing to do. Residents should be listened to. The town should be run like a business. We should be following local, state, and federal laws. And every business in town should be. And that was not happening. There was a different set of rules depending on which business it was. And to watch that happen, you have no choice but to step in and help straighten out. I mean, that's an age-old saying, right? If you want to see change, be the change. And that's what we are. We're the change that we want to see.
And Nicole, why don't you explain a little bit about how you 3 became, as I think Nancy said, co-defendants? How did that come about?
So Kathy and Nancy had, the whole process started, Kathy and Nancy were being affected by the dust. And so our procedure here in Somerset indicates that you bring that issue to the building inspector. The building inspector makes a determination. If you're not happy with that determination, you then appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So Kathy and Nancy had originally appealed to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The zoning board agreed with them that dust was leaving the scrap metal operation and issued the cease and desist. Then the building inspector approved it's been referred to as a modified dust control plan set forth by Brayton Point LLC, which is the owner of the property, and then a company named Patriot Stevedoring and Logistics. They do the handling and the loading of the ships. So the building inspector approved a modified plan that, in my opinion, was contrary to what our zoning board had set for conditions to try and protect the residents from the effects of dust and noise and the implications of the scrap metal operation. So when I saw that, I appealed because I had been affected all along. I'm not as vocal, but I appealed that as well, along with Kathy and Nancy. The zoning board agreed with the three of us that the modified plan was not consistent and contrary to their decision. And because the three of us had gone to the zoning board, when Brayton Point LLC appealed to the land court to contest the cease and desist orders, the three of us were named. So we had all been attending meetings and going through this process. We're all affected by the dust. There's also noise. There's a lot of issues, but Judge Foster's decision was focused on just the dust because those were the issue. That was the issue in front of him. But this is the result of, we were named because we happen to be the three that filed appeals with the zoning board, but the number of residents that testified and told the zoning board what they were going through at all of the meetings, the support and the number of people that have been affected by this and have participated, whether it's taking pictures and posting them on the social media Facebook page, whether it's showing up at meetings, the number of people that have been affected and have really fought for their rights in this case is just something I've never seen before. And it really does affirm your belief in the process and your belief that the laws will protect you.
Nancy, how would you characterize the cooperation of this St. Louis company, Commercial Development, which technically bought the property and made the decisions to lease parts of it out to the scrap metal operation? Were they at any point cooperative, or was this a clash all along?
So we started reaching out to Commercial Development Company pretty early, and eventually they agreed to sit down with us in a sort of mediation. We met at a local event space, and we sat across the table from them, myself and maybe 9-10 other residents, with their representation from Patriot Stevedoring, their attorneys, commercial development, carver companies, and we told them our concerns. We were concerned about the noise. We were concerned about the dust, the trucks, the late nights, and we reached out to them and said, look, you have to help us. This scrap metal is really, harming us. It's harming the neighborhood. We're concerned about our health. And we asked them directly, will you please stop with the scrap metal so we can all move forward with the development of that property? They looked us in the eye and they told us they didn't think the scrap metal was going anywhere. And that left us no choice but to fight back through the system that we had in place through our boards and eventually to the land court. They were never very cooperative. They provided us with, these phone numbers that said they were call centers and you could always contact us at any time with concerns. But I promise you, we've called, we've had dozens of people call. There's never been a return call. There's never a response. There's never an answer. It's kind of just the dummy number to placate us, but we've never gotten any results from reaching out to them that way either.
Kathy, whenever I tell people about this, anyone that knows Brayton Point always goes, well, can it be worse than living next to a coal-fired power plant? It sort of sounds like neither option is very good. Can you describe, I think you lived under both, right?
I did. And I'll tell you, Nicole summarized that very well in court for us. It's almost like, okay, so if it's a better poison than the poison we had, we should drink this poison because it's not as bad as the poison we had. It's all poison. There's no better poison than the one we had before. So I don't even know how to respond when it really grates my nerves when somebody says it. It's almost like our little neighborhood, because we always put up with, or we always had contaminants landing on our properties that, be happy this is less of a contaminant. No, they're all contaminants. They're all harmful to our health. And I know my father died of a rare cancer. He worked at the power plant. I know Nancy's father worked at the power plant, and he also died of a rare cancer. We are going to be the people that stop this from ever happening in our neighborhood again. And if it takes me until, the day I go to keep at it, I will. There is no good poison. There is no good harmful contaminant to land on our neighborhood. We don't deserve it. Nobody deserves it.
Nicole, let's talk about the judge's decision in this case, because I read it late at night. I got a copy very late at night, so I was reading it. And it was a rather unusual decision, at least as he framed it. You lived it, but as he framed it, he said the company, well, no, the town, the zoning board of appeals was saying there's a bylaw that says no dust can escape the property. And then commercial development was sort of saying, well, that's an impossible standard that no dust would leave the property. And then they went through a lot of measurements and calculations that sort of said they were within normal boundaries of what would be allowed. And the judge said, I don't care about either of those things. And it sounds like he went over to visit the neighborhood and wanted to sort of see for himself what would happen. He calls it the view in his decision. And he cites the view many times about why he's ruling the way he is. And it sounded like it was just personal experience that made him decide, in a sense, trying to step into your shoes and see what you were experiencing, that influenced the decision. Is that how you saw it, or that's how it read?
Yeah, so it is called a view when the judge goes out to the site. In a case like this, Judge Foster did come down on an afternoon. He actually toured the Brayton Point property, so we walked up to where the scrap metal piles were and along the dock. Then he went to all three individual defendants' homes, so mine, Kathy, Nancy. We also showed him where the dust meter had been stationed. So he had the chance to drive through the neighborhood, to see the neighborhood, and he does cite to that. So he is allowed to look at, his observations during that view. And you can see it when you drive through our neighborhood. You can see the dust on the homes and the dust on the windows. He had the chance to, see at Kathy's house the discoloration on her kayak. The dust is literally everywhere. And the judge did cite to his own observations during that view as being very important. So we appreciate the fact that he did take the time to come down to Somerset. It's a long drive from Boston, and he spent a couple of hours that day. So we do appreciate that. I don't think it's something he had to do, but he really took a lot of time with this case, and we're very appreciative of him doing that. A case that we were all hoping to try in 2 days ended up being a 5-day trial, voluminous documents. He heard from quite a few witnesses. He heard from 12 residents from the neighborhood. So we really do appreciate it. But you're absolutely right. He cites to his view and his observation multiple times throughout the decision.
As I understand it, when the arguments ended, or what happened when the formal process ended, he said he would have a quick decision, but I think he kept you guys on the edge of your chairs for quite a long time, right? Is that accurate?
So the case originally started off as Brayton Point's appeal of Kathy, the cases involving just Kathy and Nancy. And then some time went by, and then there was the second cease and desist, and then an appeal from that. So then those cases were all consolidated into one. And the zoning board had asked for injunctive relief right away. So the zoning board wanted their cease and desist orders enforced, and they wanted the operation shut down while we were going through the litigation. But for the sake of economy, and I do agree with the way it was handled, rather than try an injunctive relief issue and then try the entire case, Judge Foster put it on an expedited track. We really got through all the discovery in the case and got a trial date extremely fast. I mean, I am an attorney, and I've never had a case of this size and volume go through the process that quickly. And then we did closing arguments in December. But in terms of the documents for the judge to go through, it's several inches of really complex, complicated information. It was 5 days of trial transcripts, very complicated issues, and again, 2 cases. So start to finish, we did closing arguments in December. The judge's decision issued March 7th. I actually consider that to be I think he worked on that very quickly and very fast. It may seem like a long time to us, but knowing how much time goes into this, I think the judge turned it around very quickly, and he had said that throughout the trial, that he understood this is time sensitive. I mean, every day there's another 50 trucks. There's a ship that just pulled in today. So the exposure and the harm to the residents is ongoing every day. So he really did, at least in my opinion, he worked on it very diligently, and I think he turned around that decision very quickly.
Kathy, the judge, his final decision here, could you explain what he ordered and what the scrap metal operation has to do?
So the easiest way to summarize, and Nicole, please correct me if I'm wrong, is they have 14 days from the time he made the decision. They have 14 days to cease and desist all operations. So, and he listed like every possible associated operation. So that would be the trucks, that would be the cranes, that would be moving the scrap metal, bringing any more in. And then they have to go before the zoning board with a plan of compliance with their orders. So they would have to stop completely, go back to zoning, and say how they're going to comply.
So, Nancy, the 14 days they're up, is that next week or the week after?
I believe it would be next Monday would be the 14th day.
And do you feel, you said, I think Nicole mentioned that a ship is in right now.
I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. Have they made any announcement about they're going to make this, or they're...
So we did have some communication. Per the judge's previous orders, they were supposed to notify us in advance. By us, I mean the three co-defendants, if there was a ship coming into port. They didn't do that for the last ship, and they didn't do it for this ship. Nicole actually had to reach out to their attorney, who then replied and told us that, yes, there is a ship coming, and his intention was to ask for an extended loading hour schedule because they needed time to get all the scrap metal off of the dock. However, they have never stopped trucking it in. As the judge's decision came in Monday, there were still 40 to 50 trucks coming in, bringing in more scrap metal. So we are very doubtful that they ever really intended to get all of the scrap metal out, because if they did, intend to comply, they would have stopped trucking it in. It's still coming in right now as the ship's pulling in. So we just shake our heads at that and say it's just CDC being CDC, but we'll keep at it.
So presumably they'll comply, but if they don't, then the judge will have to enforce his order in some fashion, I take it. Is that?
I would assume, but Nicole would probably know better than I what the judge would be doing.
So yeah, Massachusetts Land Court has equity jurisdiction, so those judges have a lot of power. I can't speak for what Judge Foster will do if they don't comply with the order, but I wouldn't want to be the person that's not following that order. And there is also a second case that's still pending before Judge Foster on Brayton Point's request for an expanded commodities port, where they want to bring in 30 different commodities and have 48 ships loading 24 hours a day and 550 trucks running down that very narrow Brayton Point road. So Brayton Point still has their appeal pending on that, and that case is being handled by Judge Foster as well, or being heard by Judge Foster.
Wow. I want to congratulate all of you for pulling this off. I imagine when you first started, it was probably, what am I getting myself into? But it sort of came out surprisingly well, that exactly what you wanted, it sounds like. So Nicole McDonald, Kathy Souza, and Nancy Thomas, thank you very much for joining me. And to our listeners, we'll see you again next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.